Burn. Hurry, 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 hurry. Everybody. Alas, and did my Savior bleed? Did my sovereign die? Would he devote that sacred head for such a worm as I? At the cross, first saw the light, burden of my heart rolled away. It was there by faith I received my sight. Now I am happy all the day. Everybody, come on in. Got a lot of folks not here yet. What time did I say we'd start? 1:40. Okay. Anybody have a quick question you want to ask? It has to be about something so far in the pastor school. Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Well, I read an article once a week on Friday, usually, in the paper, and it was a one column. And, I don't know how many inches. I'd say probably 8 inches, something like that. And, all right. Anybody else have a question about anything with us? Yes, sir. Well, when I started these churches, I was already a pastor. And I would have a man to come in and take the church. Yes. Yes, sir. When the church started, I would have somebody all set up to take the church. Okay, I'm going to give all. Right now, I need to ask questions about what we've discussed thus far. I'll give some details in a few minutes. Something discussed since Monday night. Holler at me. If you scream at me, don't throw stuff. That's not in good taste at all. All right. You guys are Pharisees. That's what you are. You jump on anybody and just attack them. Hold it. Have a question? Holler at me. Louder. If you buy the morning session, you get all the music with it. I can't hear you. Say it louder. Saying it again won't help. Say it louder. Oh, no, we don't have the sheet music at all. Uh-huh. I recommend starting a church anywhere you can start one. A storefront building is fine. One of the best places to start a church is funeral home, because it has the organ or piano, it has the seats, a little chapel there. Some of our fellows have started churches in Seventh-day Adventist churches, renting their buildings on Sunday, and I think that's good. But anywhere, storefront building. I've started them in houses, storefront buildings, tents. Quickly, anybody else have a question? Scream at me. Yes, sir. Let's stand up, please. Stand up. Do you know if we got Brother Robertson's song on the session last night? Yes, we did. And if you get any other sessions, you'll get my songs on them too. There, that shot those sails full of holes, didn't it? Have a question? Holler at me. That's not the kind of holler I wanted. Yes, sir. Yeah, just answered that while you were misbehaving back there. You don't know about graduates, so most of these folks I insult are our graduates, and they're used to it. Holler at me if you have a question. All right. We're not all here yet, so we'll wait just a second. Holler at me. How's that? I'm not going to sing a song to Mrs. Hyles. I don't waste my time singing. I may be dumb, but I'm not stupid, and I may be old, but I'm not dead. Yeah, what? Oh, you mean traveling around the country? When my children were very, very small, I went once a month. As they got older, I went twice a month. And now for many years, I've gone every Monday and Tuesday. And holler at me if you have a question. We'll wait about 2 minutes and start. Yes, sir. Where did I get the finances? Didn't cost anything. Didn't cost anything to go to the cemetery, to go to the funeral home and ask if I could conduct funerals. Didn't cost anything to build a brush arbor. The what? Oh, I borrowed another tents from funeral homes. It didn't cost anything when I was preaching out, when I was a kid preacher. I borrowed everything. I'd get 2 of these little funeral home tents and set them up out in the country somewhere. And if you give the funeral, back in those days, if you give the funeral home some publicity and advertisement, they were glad to do it. All right. Let's see if we can talk Bucky Tucker into coming out.
I'll tell you what, I feel like the lightning bug that just backed into a fan. I'm delighted to be here. I'm trying to give you a little thing, a little bit of help along the way to just shut up and let me talk, will you, pal? All right. And I'd like for over here, if you would, the piano player to give me a real fancy introduction, the fanciest introduction you can. I just love introductions, don't you? It just blesses my heart. I've had more introductions stir my soul than anything else. I'll tell you what, it's been more than I could think about. Well, I'll tell you what, it's been a blessing to be here with you. I was thinking about my early life and my dating life, and I was thinking about how a little bit of romance and stuff, you know. I used to have a girlfriend, and she was so big she had to have 2 watches, one on each arm, because she covered 2 time zones. I remember when I was younger, I was engaged to a girl with a wooden leg, but I broke it off. When I was young, I was dating this girl, and she said to me, "You remind me of the ocean." And I said, "Oh, you mean that I'm young, I'm untamed, romantic, and restless?" She said, "No, you just make me sick." One time when I was young, I kissed a girl, and I said, "Boy, your lips are creamy." She said, "Thank you." I had one girl. I had one girl that was so big she fell in love and broke it. Really, one time I dated a girl and she was so dumb she thought Taco Bell was a Mexican phone company. One girl that I dated, she had such big lips that chapstick had to come out with a spray. Yeah, her mouth was so big she could whisper in her own ear. My brother, he married a girl that was so big when he carried her across the threshold it took 2 trips. I was younger, I wanted to marry this one girl, and I went to her father. I said, I'd like to marry your daughter. He said, have you seen her mother? I said, yes, and I'd prefer your daughter. We had a girl in our church that was engaged to an x-ray technician, but nothing developed. I was counseling a fellow one time, and I said to him he was going to get married, and I said, have you got a date for your wedding yet? He says, wow, you get to take a date to those things? When I fell in love, was about to get married, I went to the floral shop and was going to order some flowers, and the florist said, oh, you want to say it with flowers? And I said, yes. He said, how's about a couple dozen roses? I said, well, let's just make it half a dozen. I'm a man of few words. The other day, my wife, bless her heart, she had a dream. She said, Bucky, I had a dream last night that I died and went to heaven. I said, oh, was I there? She said, yes, that's how I knew it was a dream. I said to her, I had a dream that I went to heaven too. She said, well, was I there? I said, no, that's how I knew it was heaven. Well, this morning you heard the lady tell about how she helped get Brother and Mrs. Hyles together, but I know better about the story. I was there. I was really the one that helped, and I was the one that really got the two together and started the whole thing going. And I want to show you, there's several versions to this. You heard one version this morning, but I want to show you a different version. Mrs. Hyles has a version, Brother Hyles has a version and everything. And I want to show you what really happened there. And we're going to show you, first of all, Mrs. Hyles' version of what happened here. And so this is, show Mrs. Hyles' version of what happened. The young Jack Hyles.
Oh, Mrs. Hyles? Mrs. Hyles, will you go out with me to the movies?
Well, Jackie boy, I will go with you if you will promise that you'll sit 5 seats away from me and not tell anyone that we're together. I'll just consider it a mission project.
Oh boy! Oh!
That's when he had hair. You notice it doesn't bounce around like that anymore. In fact, I met a man the other day who was so bald he had to carry his dandruff in his hand. Well, now you saw Mrs. Hyles' version of it, and we're going to now show you what Brother Hyles' version of it is. Everybody has it from a different point of view, and we're going to show you Dr. Hyles' version of this thing, how they got together.
lady.
Good night. What did I tell you about leaving your shoe here in the balcony? You can fall and kill somebody. Good night. You don't have to beg. You don't have to get on your knees. You don't have to cry. You don't have to hurt.
Please go out with me. Please go out with me to a movie, please.
Good night. If I can grab you and shake you, I would. Oh.
Please.
Good. Excuse me. Good night. Oh, well, yes, I'll go out with you as long as you stay 10 feet behind me and call me Lord.
Oh, good.
You've heard that lady's version of it this morning. You've heard Mrs. Hyles' side of it, and you've heard Brother Hyles' side of it. But let me tell you how it really happened. I was there. I know I was there when it all happened. I want to show you right now how it really happened that they got together. Watch carefully. Now you know the rest of the story. Just one more thought about my old girlfriend is one time she was crossing the street and got hit by a car. She looked at the guy and said, "Why didn't you just drive around me?" He said, "I didn't think I had enough gas." God bless you all.
In 1959, when Brother Hyles became our preacher, boy, was he different. The first time we heard him preach, we'd never heard anybody speak that fast before. You knew that if you sneezed, you would miss a whole paragraph. And his vowel sounds, when I was a child, it just seemed to me that all of his vowel sounds just kind of leaned backwards. But he thought we talked funny too. He knew that he had come here to be our pastor, only he pronounced it something like pastor. He said that, well, we were saying, yes, you are our pastor. Only to him, he said that it sounded like we were saying pastor. On Sunday mornings, after our church, you see, had been without a preacher for a year, and the American Baptist Convention had been sending us pulpit fill as preachers, well, the people who were the biggest noisemakers around, whenever it was time to sing a hymn that was in the hymn book and it had an amen at the end, they always sang the amen. Now, to my parents and grandparents and a number of other people, all the singing of this amen kind of irked them a little bit, and they were praying one certain way that the Lord would send us the right kind of man that we might get rid of the first Sunday. And they all sang their amen. Well, Brother Hyles knew the song. He didn't need to open the hymn book. He did not sing the amen. The next song that we sang was one that did not have an amen printed at the end of the hymn. But of course he didn't open the hymn book because he knew the song. But he remembered we had sung amen the last time. So we did not sing amen, and he did, alone. We praise the Lord that he sent us a Brother Hyles, who gave to us, who taught us, not only, yes, that we need to tell people about Jesus, but the how to tell them about Jesus. And so there are some songs in Brother Hyles' memory repertoire that can conjure up, different memories, and some of them can have to do with the memory of the fact that There are many of us who are so thankful that those who enjoyed singing all of the amens eventually went off and started their own church.
That's the way it was, no joke. No joke. All right, let's see what's cooking on the stove right now. There are many things that happen to us that have a part in changing our lives. I had just begun preaching at the Miller Road Baptist Church in Garland, Texas, about 43 years ago. Just started preaching there. And the building was small. We had a handful of people. I picked up a visitor's card one Sunday morning after church, and it said Margie Jackson. I know the number. I think it was Sharon Drive. It was 2225. Pretty sure it was Sharon Drive. Well, I went out soul winning that afternoon, Sunday afternoon, and went to 2225, what I remember to be Sharon Drive. And there was a little Catholic lady, had, I think, 2 little children. Very, very beautiful little gal, looked like she's a teenager. And I wanted a Christ. She came to church that night, and church was small and didn't have but 45, 50 people, maybe a few more. And so I read her name, and she came to the altar and asked if she could say a word. And I said, well, of course you may. And she said, I just want to tell people I got saved. Of course, a soft little southern drawl. She said, I got saved today, and I was a Catholic, but now I'm not. She said, I got a new interceptor. And that's pretty good doctrine. And I got a new interceptor. And Margie became one of the finest soul winners we had. So many memories around Margie. Enough for Margie. I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think she and her husband may have been separated at the time. I'm not sure about that. I think they were. Several days passed. I'm not sure how long. May have been weeks. I'm not sure how many days or weeks. I was out soul winning one day. I remember, as I remember it, I was driving north on Garland Road in Garland, Texas. Looked up and saw behind me a policeman following me. I wondered what I had done wrong. I can go 5 miles an hour and feel guilty when I see a policeman behind me. So I decided to see if he was following me, so I turned right on Miller Road. And the police car turned right on Miller Road. I got suspicious. I drove down to 5th Street, which was several blocks, and I thought, well, I'll turn left on 5th and see if that car turns left on 5th. And the police car turned left on 5th. I said, I think the guy's following me. I wonder what I've done. So I decided to check one more time, so I turned left on, I think it was Chandler Drive. Not may have been Chandler, some little street just before we got to Freeman Drive, I know. And police car turned left. I got this idea that he may be following me. So I decided to take one more chance. I turned right up a little alley between that street and Freeman Street, and the police car turned up the alley. So I decided to stop. I stopped. He gets out of the car. I get nervous. He walks up and he says, what's a fella got to do to get right with God? I'd never had a policeman ask me that before. And I said, who are you? And he said, I'm Marge Jackson's husband. And he got the assurance of his salvation. And they became faithful members of our church. That's the story you've heard me tell over and over and over again here at First Baptist Church. First and third Sunday, I think I'll tell that story. And but I've told it many times. That was Leonard Jackson. Leonard Jackson later on was called to preach, and now for many years has been a faithful preacher of the gospel. Not many months ago, about a year ago I guess, I got a word that Marge was sick, had cancer. And I called her on the phone and took a couple of times and talked with her. Soon she went to heaven. Leonard's still going strong. One of my preacher boys. I'm proud of him. I love him. He's here this afternoon. Leonard Jackson, would you stand, Leonard, please? Coming. You remember the story? Tell him you remembered it. You remember the story?
That you just told?
Yeah.
Yes.
Wonderful. I got embarrassed this morning. And is that the way it happened? About those streets?
Pretty well.
Pretty well. Right up here.
Pretty well.
Margie was an amazing young lady and one wonderful soul winner. Give us something about the memories of those days over 40 years ago.
Well, it's hard to express in just a few moments, Brother Jack, but of course, obviously, our lives were changed and revolutionized by the Lord leading us to your ministry there at Miller Road, and I guess some of the greatest days of our life were spent there with you, and of course, getting out into the ministry and having the joy of pastoring and most of all, of course, seeing people saved and baptized and trying to just keep going for the Lord. And I was talking to the brother that you have me with. I'm going to ask you something.
All right.
Is it any accident that you put me with an ex-cop?
I didn't know he was an ex-cop. Who you with?
Bob Hooker.
He's an ex-cop.
He's an ex-cop.
I thought he was an ex-con.
Oh, okay.
Leonard, you remember the story how that Margie's folks got saved?
Oh, yes, sir.
You've heard me tell this one too. It was his wife. His wife was, I said, a real pretty little thing, and southern and blonde, and just had a little soft personality, and she just talked like this. She just loved Jesus so much, and she'd talk about Jesus everywhere she went. And So she had a mother. Her father was in the movie business somehow, some kind of movie business.
That was her stepfather.
Stepfather. And they were lost. Her mother and stepfather were lost. And Margie'd pray for them, They'd come to church. They'd come because they thought I was cute. They didn't like it. They said that. They said, your preaching is cute. And they were pretty well-to-do people. And so I'd go back and I'd witness to Margie's mother. And she'd say, I'm not going to get saved till I feel something.
That's right.
And I said, look, you don't get saved by feeling. God saves you. And then you feel the assurance, and that gives you joy. I'm not going to get saved till I feel something. I went back, and she said, right back over there, every service. I'd go back, and I'd talk to her. I'm not going to get saved till I feel something. And she's one of the few people in the church wore a mink coat to church. And you could spot her. And so one Sunday morning, I think it was, I decided to go back and talk with her. Again. And she said, I just don't feel anything. I'm not going to get saved till I feel something. And man, I got fed up with that stuff. Been months we tried to get her saved. And she said, I said, okay, if I guaranteed you a feeling, would you come to the altar? She said, it won't do any good. I won't feel anything. I said, yes, you will. I'll promise you, you'll feel something. I've never done this before in my life. I had a pen in my hand, but I said, I promise you, you'll feel it. She said, I won't feel anything, and I'm not going to get saved till I feel it. I said, you'll feel it. If I promise, okay, I'll come down there and I'll kneel, but it won't do any good. So we went to the altar. I knelt beside her, and I began to pray. And I said, oh, God, I said, give this lady a feeling. And I said, oh, God, I want her to get saved. Margie's praying for her. Margie's back there just praying her heart out. Oh, I said, God, give her a feeling. And I said, okay, now you pray. She said, won't do any good. I said, pray anyhow. What did I tell you to pray? She said, I'm not going to pray till I get a feeling. And I said, okay, God will give you a feeling. Pray. I said, say these words, dear Lord. And these words are what she said. Dear Lord, this doesn't do any good. Because I don't feel anything. I said, say, God, have mercy on my soul. Lord, have mercy on my soul. And save me. And say, Lord, I think I'm beginning to feel it.
That's right. That's right.
And save my soul. Oh, I trust Jesus. I feel it. I feel it. I feel it.
That's right.
And Marge came unscrewed back there. Oh, she had a spell, and we had a service. Wonderful, wonderful memories. This guy was with me through the years, faithful and loyal, and he's the guy that tracked me down, and I was so glad. Only time a cop ever stopped me and didn't give me a ticket. God bless you, Leonard. Thanks a million. Stand right there if you would, please.
Because of you, I'm here today. You had a part in some small way. Whate'er I am or hope to be, you had a part in making me. You crossed my path one happy day and helped me find God's perfect way. I would not know the joys He had you not humbly crossed my path.
All right. Somebody else crossed my path one day. I decided to walk the path with her. She's going to come now, and she's going to take the time with me. I think she's back there. I walked in a while ago. She said, there we go. All right. My lovely wife, and she's going to talk to you about the young Jack Hyles.
Where did
Leonard is right over there.
Oh, hi. I haven't been able to greet these people personally, some of them, so it's really good to see you. I heard a lady in a red vest got kissed by my husband earlier today, so I on the lookout for her. Brother Gray brought a wonderful message last night, I felt, and several times he mentioned living above the fray. And I thought about that. It would be wonderful if we could live above the fray or always be on top. But disappointments do come, don't they? You who've just gone out into the work in recent years, maybe started a church or have gone to a little struggling church, and disappointments do come. And yet, why are we taken by surprise when God told us that fiery trials would come, disappointments, troubles, but yet they still hurt? I'll never forget the young Jack Hyles and myself in our first full-time church. A man came into our church, got saved, he and his family, and became such marvelous workers and members of the church. And then I'll never forget quite sometime later, when that man who had learned to love us and followed and been such a help turned his back. That was the first time someone we really loved and had loved us turned their back. And you've been there. You know what I'm talking about. And it hurts. And is it possible to live above the fray or to stay on top when those kinds of things happen? I remember while we were at Miller Road Baptist Church, when the word came to me, my husband came home from an associational meeting one morning. I had stayed home with our new baby, and he said, "We just got kicked out of the Southern Baptist Convention." I said, "What do you mean, we, white man?" But I was home minding my own business. However, I had known that we had taken a stand to not support the liberal schools and to send our money undesignatedly to the financial program of the Southern Baptists, and when you hit anybody in their pocketbook, it hurts. So we were excommunicated, and it hurt. It hurt deeply. I had been saved in a Southern Baptist church. My mother enrolled me in a Southern Baptist church when I was just a baby in the nursery. And so these kinds of things do hurt. So I know you've had your own disappointments, and I've talked to several girls who've left here and gone out with their husbands this week who are already finding the little disappointing things, and get a few in here and they go out the back door and a few more come in the front door, and it seems like they just can't get everybody coming at once, and it's hard. But I want to tell you that I have a man who years ago learned to live on top. He does live above the fray, and I don't know many people who've had more reasons maybe to be under the circumstances, but he is not and has not been. And he gave me some things that I think might help you if you'll learn to do these things, just practical things in staying on top. Not allowing ourselves to feel sorry for ourselves, go into time of self-pity, that kind of thing. By the way, I want to go back to the point. When our first beloved member did turn his back, it wasn't because we had done something wrong. We were still doing right. When we were excommunicated from our convention, we were doing right. And if you'll notice, ladies and gentlemen, most of the Bible characters who were persecuted for doing right. So don't let it make you feel you're a dirty ex-con or something when these things come. If you follow God, trials do come, disappointments often come. Some of Brother Hyles' practical suggestions that he's practiced through the years and has helped me to see that I need to practice it also if I live above the fray are stay away from negative people. You don't need to shun anybody, of course, and you know I'm not saying that. You never treat anyone unkindly. But you don't want to spend your quality amount of time with people who are just always critical, always negative, always have gossip. You know what a gossip is when they tell you something, 2 and 2 equals 5. And because it always grows. But we don't need to stay around those kinds of people. Or, if we have to be around them, learn how to turn the conversation to positive. And I think most of the time we can do that. The trouble is we enjoy the negative too much. And we like to hear it. We don't want to admit that. But it does not help us. And we do get under the circumstances when we listen to too much negative. So stay away from those people who pull you down because they're just always negative. That's a good suggestion Brother Hyles has lived by. Shield yourself from books, tapes, papers that come into your hands. Maybe they come in your mailbox, but come to you that tell the scoop. You don't need to know the scoop. I have a paper that comes to our house. I've not bothered to stop it. If they want to waste their postage to send it to me, that's okay. I just go get it in the mailbox and go put it in the garbage can. Because I know if I read it, I will not live above the fray. And you don't need to read and listen to things that have the scoop, that will make you begin to wonder, who's right? What is right? Make you start to doubt. You won't stay on top that way. And it's best to just not listen to or read those things that will pull you down. A third very simple way to stay on top is sing. Happy music. You know, one reason you're happy, you've been hearing a lot of happy music. Thank God we've not been hearing the kind that was sung a while ago all week. Though, you know, I mean, that's good for the Volga Boat song or something, but we've heard happy music. Now you say, but boy, if you heard me sing, you'd know that would sure that'd pull me down in a hurry. Well, if you have to get in the shower and turn the water on full force, sing happy music, it'll help you stay on top. It really will. Choose a song for a day. Maybe, you know, something that really speaks to your heart. And just, my husband does that. He'll get a song on his mind and sing it all day long. And I recognize it too. But that's a really good suggestion. When you feel that you are not quite on top, look for someone you can encourage. And you know what? It never fails. If you just look for someone who needs your encouragement, you will get right back up on top. You'll be so happy that you've helped someone, you will forget that you were down just a little bit. Someone has said, no one is useless who lightens another's load. And that's very true. And you'll feel very useful, and you'll feel very much back up on top of the fray. Number 5, just don't talk about your problems. Don't go around from this one to that one to the next one, you know, by phone or however, and just keep repeating and repeating the disappointment or the problem or whatever has come. Because every time you tell it, you embellish it a little bit, and it just pushes you further down. Forget it. You don't need to talk about it. Don't bring problems home. There are a lot better things to do at home than discuss problems, trials, disappointments. Now, there may be times when you need to periodically talk about a serious thing that's happened, but as a general rule, don't bring your problems home. I talked with a staff lady, some years ago now, but I'll never forget what she said. She said one day she and her husband realized they had known a negative for many, many months, maybe even years, but they had never discussed it. They worked in the same church together, but they didn't discuss the negatives. I think that's a good idea. I think that's a real good idea. I was very impressed with that. Because if we go home, take all those trials and things at home, people are probably involved with a lot of the disappointments and the problems, and we must love our people, not eat them for lunch. So we don't need to be talking about the disappointments that they bring and cause problems for us. Learn to talk to cheerful, optimistic people when you feel a little bit down. And I'm not saying tell them about your problem. Just talk to them. They're cheerful. They're always optimistic, and their spirits will rub off on you. I have certain people I know that if I call them on the phone, they will lift my spirit. Their voices. I can call Mrs. Colston. By the time she said, "Hello, Colstons," I feel better. And there are other people, I could not name those that I think of in that way. But learn to go to those. The trouble is, when we do get under not quite on top, we want others to commiserate with us. We don't want cheerful people. We want to just wallow in our pity for a while. But it doesn't help anybody. And especially, it does not help the person who is down. Next, talk about problems only when you're seeking counsel. When you go to someone wise enough to try to help you find the answer to the problem. I didn't say go to somebody who will agree with you and commiserate with you, but someone who will wisely try to help you if it's a problem that you need help in. Go to them. Now, next, plan when you will think, or ladies, worry about the disappointments, the problems. I don't know about most of the women here, but I know when I tend to worry or get under the load, and that's when I wake up at night. But you know what? If I plan a certain time to just think through a problem and, if possible, find the solution and get it out of the way, I won't have to wake up and worry about it. So if you'll plan a time, however little bit you need, think about it, try to find a solution, go from it, and then forget it. That's a good advice Brother Hyles gave that. He's so wise. That's one reason he gets so much done. He has a time he knows he's going to think about pastor school, but when he comes home to have a date with me, pastor school's forgotten, and we go to something else. And so he plans when to do each thing and puts them in their own compartment, and we'd all be less frustrated if we could do that. Here's a simple thing that will really help you, all of us, to stay on top. Never miss church. Never miss church. The fellowship of other Christians, the singing of the songs, the messages, everything, it's just all goes together to help us to stay on top. And I don't think we realize how much we need church. I need my pastor, and I need my church. I need my church people. I need every service that I can be here. And I stay on top when I don't miss church. Learn to do something that takes your full concentration. Perhaps develop a hobby. Now, guys, I'm not talking about going out playing golf every day, but that's been paid its dues, hasn't it? But I think sometimes we do need to be able to go to something that just takes our total concentration, that makes us happy and helps us to forget those things that have brought us down. I have several hobbies that do that for me, but I find that just getting real industrious and doing a hard job that I've hated to do and have put off doing, and I do it, I feel wonderful when it's done, and I've forgotten I had a problem. Works good. It really is good. We don't like it, but it's good. Schedule your Bible time in prayer. I certainly did not put these in order of importance, but sometimes when we're down, we're so down, we don't even feel God is speaking anymore or that He will hear us. But if you'll have that scheduled time, He is still speaking through His Word and He's still listening. You may not feel it, but you will eventually if you'll just keep on with your schedule. Schedule it. And you need it. This is a real good suggestion. Have regular dates with your spouse. This will help keep you on top. It was interesting some months ago, my husband and I take every Friday afternoon and Friday evening together. And I know sometimes his schedule gets so busy and I feel that he really needs that time. So I said, what does Friday afternoon and Friday evening do for you? And he said, when I am so burdened down during the week with counseling and with all the myriad things I have to do, I stop and think, but Friday afternoon's mine. And he said, that just keeps me going and gives me new energy as I look forward to that time of total relaxation and really enjoying being together. So that's very important, and it will help you take care of your health. Amen. You can't be on top if you're not eating well and if you're not caring enough to get enough rest. And I know nobody's sleeping this week, but take care of your health. That helps you. That seems like a simple suggestion, but it's important. You can't live just on caffeine and that kind of thing, you know. Quit preaching, Ms. Hyles. That's not what you're supposed to do. And last of all, praise God in everything. He said to. He said, in everything give thanks. And you know what? If we would learn to do that, we would find that there is something in every situation about which we can praise and laugh. Again, I want to say that I think has made my husband able to bear your burdens as he pastors many of you, and the burdens of our own church, and my burdens, and everybody else's, because he just laughs a lot. And a merry heart doeth good like a medicine. And so we need to learn to do these. These are very simple suggestions, but they're profound. If you would really, really put them to use, I think we can live above the fray more often than we do. Okay, Brother Hyles.
Yeah, we have some questions.
I crossed off the ones you...
Oh, good. Thank you. Here's some questions that have been turned in, and I'm going to ask Ms. Hyles some of them. Let's see. We did this one yesterday. Did we discuss about money you have to spend?
What money?
What money? Yeah. Do you ever have money of your own to spend? Somebody asked.
Yes. I'm thankful that from early on in our marriage, my husband gave me my own allowance. I said yesterday he did not want me to work outside the home. When I said he didn't want me to work, ladies, I apologize. We work harder than anybody, but not outside the home. So I didn't make my own money, but he has always given me my grocery allowance and enough more to where I don't have to go to him and say, please, I need a pair of nylons. Please, I can get those myself. And, men, it is degrading for your wife to have to ask for every little thing she needs like that. It's so helpful if you could give her her own amount of money that she can use, and maybe she can learn to use it wisely and stretch it, and you'd be surprised how well she can do.
I really would. What success, somebody asked, did you predict for the young Jack Hyles?
That's a very interesting question. I think I knew from the first date I had with my husband, that whatever he did, he would succeed. Especially on our second date when he asked if we could close our date with prayer. That, of course, was very unusual. I had never had that happen before.
Just how did you close your dates before?
But he had a determination. I started to say stubbornness, but that I knew that now success, what is success? I just knew that he would do his best at whatever he did. Whether we pastored in a church of 100 people all of our lives or whatever, I think that's success. If you're doing the best you can and you're reaching people, winning souls. I'm not saying you're successful just because you have a large church, but I did feel that he would be a success. I don't know how, except that he was so dogmatic about his standards and his beliefs that I liked it. I really did. I tried to change it, but I liked it.
This question comes from your husband. Why did you give 3 pictures away that Christmas? Let's go on to the next question here.
I have a selective memory.
Our people understand that. She told me the other day she had a selective memory, and I thought that was a good deal, so I preached a sermon on it in a few days. And okay. Let me see if I can get the ones I like the best here. This is good. After having attended a rather large church with a Bible scholar for a pastor, how did you adjust to a tiny church and to your husband's preaching?
Well, I think that it's hard for me to remember back, but I do believe that we can get a blessing in fact, my husband taught me this when we would go on vacation and maybe just stop into a little unknown country church when it came church time, that if you go looking for a blessing, you'll always get it. We didn't go to criticize when we went to churches, but my husband, I knew his, how much he wanted to be a blessing to me, and he has made this statement. He always tries to think of something I have not heard in his messages, so something will be fresh and new to me, and I appreciate that. I've heard all of his jokes many, many times. I still think they're funny, but he always has tried to minister to me, because as he said, I believe yesterday, I left my pastor, who was a marvelous Bible teacher, and went to him. But of course, Brother Hyles has always loved the Word and has been a student of the Word, and I've always felt he was a great preacher from the very beginning, even when I knew he had to struggle to get a sermon. So it wasn't hard, but I believe the answer lies in you deciding you're going to get a blessing. And ladies that go out, and maybe your husband's your pastor for the first time, and all you can think of is his dirty socks laying back at home on the floor and all that. You forget that and think, that's the man of God I've got to get a blessing from, and you can. Is that a good enough answer?
Yeah, but we made a promise. I made a promise to God years ago. Every time I finish preparing a sermon, or while I'm preparing it, I ask myself, is there something in here new for my wife? Always do that. Never have failed to do it when I preach a sermon. We were out of town for a few days during the Christmas between Sundays, and I preached out on the West Coast. I got a new sermon. I could have preached any one. If she hadn't been there, I'd preach my old sermons. But she was with me. I got a new sermon. I got it for her. And I always try to put, and by the way, I don't remember this or not. We decided years ago that we would not ever go to a church to criticize a service. We were going in Marshall, Texas, as a couple of kid preacher and his wife, and we were headed for a service, and I knew I was going to criticize. I knew the fellow knew I didn't like him. I went to criticize. We didn't get quite there. I turned around in the middle of the road and went back home. His house, where are you going? I said, I'm not going to go. I said, I'm going to criticize, and I know it. I'd rather go home, and we didn't go to the service. That's been one of our policies through the years. How were you able to keep quiet through the criticism that your husband received as a young pastor?
I guess I'm chicken. I don't know exactly why that I never tried to fight his battles, except that I knew he could fight them better than I could, and he would do it wisely, and with God's help, I would get in there with fingernails and toenails and ice picks and make it worse. Women are so emotional, and I'm a laid-back person. I don't like fights. I like peace, and I believe that's probably the reason. I just really knew that he's a big boy and he can take care of the battles much better than I can. And I do think men, as a general rule, do handle things much more wisely and on an even keel than women do. We're dirty fighters.
Yes, we know. Last question for today. How did you adjust as a young wife to your husband traveling so much?
Well, it was always hard to see him leave. And yet, I was busy rearing children, had my own home to run and life to run. The biggest adjustment, I think, the hardest adjustment for me was about the time I got used to lining up the children and say, now you brush your teeth and you go take your bath and you go get tucked in bed. And then when he came back home, I just put him at the end of the line and said, and you go get your jammies on. And so I had to take off my hat that I had put on as mother and dad and let him be dad again. But the Lord gave me a gift as a young girl of not minding being alone. I don't mean at all that I did not miss my husband, but yet I do enjoy having time to read, to develop hobbies, to do other things. And so I do think that's a gift God gave me. But it was hard to take the hat off and give it back to my husband when he came home.
Thank you. Thank you very much. See you later. Okay. Again, you never know exactly what affects your life. We're bringing you some stories of illustrations that I've used in my preaching of things that happened back in the early days. And I was telling my staff this morning, a few of us were together planning, and I said, one of the blessings I'm getting is these folks are confirming the truthfulness of these stories. And then the very next person said she didn't remember what happened. But I was a young preacher. I needed to find out there was a God in heaven. And there had been a lot of miracles in my life, but this one was one that really got me to believing that God was going to use me as a man of God. I wish I could tell you that people have been healed because I have a bottle of olive oil in my office, and every Sunday, and folks come by and I anoint them with oil. Never publicly, never have a healing service, but every Sunday somebody comes by. One of my favorite little stories I tell is about the couple that came by and couldn't have a baby. And they asked me to anoint with oil. I said, I'm sorry, but I only anoint the sick. The little lady said, they're getting in the middle 30s or late 30s, and she said, if we can't have a baby, isn't there something wrong with our bodies? And I said, yes. She said, what's sickness? Isn't something wrong with your bodies what sickness is? And I said, yeah, I guess so. She said, then anoint us with oil. I never known anybody to pray to have a baby. I anointed both of them with oil and asked God to open the womb of that lady and give life to the seed of the husband. And in a few months she came back and she said, preacher, she said, I'm pregnant. And God has answered your prayer. And she said, we're going to have a baby. Well, Dr. Cal Streeter attends our church, and Dr. Streeter is a doctor in the area, and he was her doctor. Dr. Streeter told some of his patients that also couldn't have babies, that also from our church. 11 other couples that were his patients were told by him to come and see me, and I'd anoint them with oil and pray they'd have a baby. One day, 11 couples came to my office door after church, and 22 people came in my office, and I prayed for 11 couples that they'd have a baby, and the doctor already given up hope. If he can't do it, he sends them to me, and I anoint them with oil. Out of those 11 couples, we got 12 babies, a Scout's honor. 10 had one, and 1 had twins. I used too much oil. I knew I did. I knew I did. I knew I did. And Dr. Streeter came to me after a while, and he said, Pastor, as you know, my wife and I can't have any children either. Would you anoint us with oil? And I anointed Dr. and Mrs. Streeter. I think they now have 8 children. He wrote me a note the other day, and he said, you got any reverse oil you can use on me? And but all of it started when I was just a young man in my 20s in Garland, Texas. One of our fine ladies in the church had Beverly Harn it was on Christmas Eve, and I hope I remember the story correctly. It was on Christmas Eve, and she had a wreck, I think that morning or sometime. Anyway, I went by the house. I heard she had a little wreck. It was nothing serious, just a minor accident. And word came to me she did. So she lived a few blocks from us, and so I just drove by the house to see if she was okay. And she said, Pastor, everything is fine. Went to the doctor. Had my boy Joe checked. I think Joe was just a little tiny fellow. I guess maybe a baby. I'm not sure. Probably less than 2. Anyway, just a child. And she said the doctor said he's fine and everything is fine. She was getting ready for Christmas Eve. She was having some company, as I remember correctly, come over that night. It was Christmas Eve. And all of a sudden, something came over me. And I said, Mrs. Harn, there's something wrong with Joe. I wasn't even looking at him. I said, little Joe's sick. Please take him and have him checked. Well, Beverly Harn got a little, seemed like a little irritated at me, because she said, Preacher, this Christmas Eve, the tree was there, preparing a meal. And again, it's been so long, every little detail may not be true, but exactly right, but this is the way I remember it. And I said, I beg you, take that boy to the hospital and have him checked. She said, I've had him to the doctor, Pastor, and the doctor says he's fine. But I said, Beverly, he's not fine. God is speaking to my heart. There's something wrong with that boy. And almost angrily, she took the boy Christmas Eve to Better Hospital. And they checked him. And if I remember correctly, the doctor said he has a ruptured spleen, and if you hadn't brought him, he wouldn't have lived very long. And that changed my life. I became a charismatic Baptist preacher. It did. It changed my life. It really did. I mean, the fact that God could speak to me like that, I'd heard he did to others, but I never had felt that way before about anything like that. And that boy lived, thank God, had surgery, he lived. And a young preacher found out there was a God in heaven. Mrs. Harn is here today, and so is little Joe. Would you have him come, please? Would you stand, Joe and Mrs. Harn? step right over here, folks, if you would. Turn it. That's good. Hold that right there. Miss Harn, step right up here, if you would. Miller Road Baptist Church. When did you join Miller Road Baptist Church? Talk right into that.
In 1953.
Real close. Say that again.
In 1953.
Were you saved at Miller Road, or were you saved already?
No, I was saved at 12 years old in Arkansas.
Remember those days when the church was growing so fast and we grew and everything?
Yes, I really do.
Wonderful days. I told the story, and of course, it's been so many years. Good night. How old are you now, Joe? 44. 44, and how old was he then?
It was 40 years ago.
He was 4 years old then. It was 40 years ago. As you remember the story, feel free to go ahead and tell it.
Well, it was the day before Christmas Eve that he was hurt in the accident. And we had the doctor out 2 different nights at the house. And the doctor didn't seem to think that there was much wrong with him. It just knocked his 2 front teeth loose at the time this happened. But when I started to get him ready for bed, he had this sharp pain hit him. And it scared us so bad. We thought he was going to pass out. So I called the doctor, and he came out. And he checked him, and he still didn't find anything wrong. Then on Christmas Eve, Brother Hyles and Brother Bob Keys came by to see us. And they brought him a little Christmas present. And he was concerned about him then, and we really were too. But that night, again, the pain hit him. And I called the doctor out again that night. And he said, well, he thought it was just he was in shock. And so we went through another night. He didn't have a lot of pain. He was just getting more lifeless, and his stomach was somewhat distended, but I was young, and I took the doctor's word. The next day was Christmas, and we took him, and he sat under the Christmas tree and opened his presents, and then he just laid out on the floor. He just didn't have the strength to sit up. Brother Hyles called that afternoon and asked how he was, and I said, he's lifeless, and if he's not better by morning, we're going to get another doctor. And he told me about his daughter Becky having this doctor, and that they felt that if they hadn't got another doctor, they wouldn't have had her. And he says, get somebody now. And so we discussed doctors, and we had used a pediatrician before we moved to Garland, and he told me to try to call him, and if I couldn't get him, he told me who his doctor was. And I knew of that doctor. It had been my cousin's doctor too. He says if they won't look at him, if they can't come see him or you can't get them, he says, I know they'll at Texas Children's Hospital that they'll see him. And he said, you must get a doctor tonight. I hung up the phone, and I immediately called our pediatrician, and I got him. He was at home. He came out to the house. He asked about bringing him there, and I said, he's so sick. And he said, yes, I'll come out there. So he came out, and he checked him, and he said, well, we need to get him to Baylor. And he called a surgeon from the house and told him to be there waiting for us. And he said, they'll probably x-ray, but they may not find out anything when they do that. But he said, we need to do something tonight. So I asked, should I get an ambulance? And he said, no, just put him on the back seat. He said, he's little, and he said, get him there as quick as you can. And we took him over. They x-rayed. They found out nothing. But they said that they felt that they couldn't afford to watch him overnight, that they must take him right to surgery. And we said, it's in your hands. They took him to surgery. The pediatrician went in with them and watched the surgery. And when the pediatrician came out halfway through, and he said, it is a ruptured spleen, and the doctor's removing it. And there's some other internal injuries that he's fixing. And he said, well, when the surgeon came out afterwards and talked to us, he said, it was truly a miracle. He says, I have never seen a spleen ruptured that bad that the person lived that long. He said, we'd given him a blood transfusion, and he said he's going to come through it. But he said his life was truly spared. So I've always credited Brother Hyles, and God spoke to him about this, or I didn't know why he called me and told me I must get something else done. he didn't tell me at that time that God told him to do that. But anyway, I thank God for that, and I credit Brother Hyles and the Lord for his life.
You know, I was just thinking, Joe, hadn't been for me, you've probably been in heaven 40 years now. You're probably upset with me, aren't you, Joe? Joe, Stephanie, what do you, you're in church now faithfully?
Yes, sir.
Well, how do you serve? What are you in church?
In church?
Are you a deacon?
Not right now. I've served as deacon and chairman of the deacons.
Oh, you served as chairman of the deacons?
Yes, sir.
That's all right. You can get forgiven for that. You're an usher, aren't you? I think you are.
Yes, sir.
I think I saw you
yes,
usher.
Yes, sir.
And 40 years ago, I'll never forget how I felt that Christmas season. And God spoke to our heart. I don't know how many times He's done it since then, but I've thought about it time and time again. God bless you, Joe. So nice to have you today. Thank you for coming. Everything. Thank you for coming. We'll just stand right here, folks. Just stand right here.
Because of you, I'm here today. You had a part in some small way. Whate'er I am or hope to be, you had a part in making me. You crossed my path one happy day and helped me find God's perfect way. I would not know the joys He had you not humbly crossed my path.
I loved everybody. Rose O'Brien, are you here? Is Rose O'Brien here? Does anybody know if Rose O'Brien is here? Is she on the property? You know. Is she? One of you ushers back there, go over to the office and get Rose O'Brien for me, would you? Who will do it? Good. Go get Rose O'Brien. I want her to come over here. A similar story that I want to take a moment to tell you, and we'll do it in just a few moments.
Among others, there were two special events which deeply touched the heart of the young Hammond pastor of First Baptist Church. On one of their early anniversaries here with the church family gave to Brother and Mrs. Hyles a trip to the Holy Land. Now, as a youngster, I remember seeing Brother Hyles shed tears while he was preaching as he was pleading with sinners. This is the first memory that I have of seeing anyone cry when they've been given a gift. When Brother and Mrs. Hyles returned from the Holy Land, they shared with us how deeply moved they were to see the things that Jesus had seen, to walk where Jesus had walked. There was another event that deeply touched the heart of this young Jack Hyles, pastor of the First Baptist Church of Hammond. And that was seeing their preschooler little girl, Cindy, as she stood on the hearth in front of the fireplace at home, twisting her skirt, swaying a little bit as she sang in her Texan drawl, although she was born here in Hammond, singing, "To be like Jesus, to be like Jesus. All I ask, to be like Him." Preacher had seen the things that Jesus had seen, had walked where Jesus had walked, but had heard out of the little mouth of a little girl the desire to be like Jesus. The challenge of that song, the tenderness, the earnestness that came from the preschooler's heart, kept challenging the preacher and has challenged him all these years. In my estimation, he's lived up to it pretty well. And, by the way, so has Cindy.
To be like Jesus, to be like Jesus, All I ask to be like him all through life's journey from earth to glory. All I ask to be like him. Oh, to be like thee, blessed Redeemer. This is my constant longing and prayer. Gladly I'll forfeit all of earth's treasures, Jesus, thy perfect likeness to wear. Oh, to be like thee, oh, to be like thee, blessed Redeemer, pure as thou art. Come in thy sweetness, come in thy fullness, stamp thine own image deep on my heart. Oh, to be like thee, full of compassion, loving, forgiving, tender and kind, helping the helpless, cheering the fainting, seeking the wandering sinner to find. Oh, to be like thee, oh, to be like thee, blessed Redeemer, pure as thou art. Come in thy sweetness, come in thy fullness, stamp thine own image deep on my heart. To be like Jesus, to be like Jesus, all I ask, to be like him all through life's journey from earth to glory. All I ask, to be like him. It's my desire to be like him.
I went through the Bible. I went through the Bible and I checked every verse in the Bible about Christ-likeness, every one. And I'd look at those verses and Cindy would stand as a little girl on the hearth of the fireplace and sing what she just sang. She's my daughter and we're friends. God bless you. Thank you. Miss O'Brien. Rose O'Brien, I thought about this a while ago. She has a story so much like the Harn story that Rose is on our staff, has been for a good night, 85, 90 years. And Rose, could you take about 3 minutes and tell about your daughter? You know, one thing that every church needs is a man of God. The man of God. Somebody to call who can pray and get a hold of God. And take just a few minutes, and tell about your situation. Remember the story?
Sure do. How could I forget? Excuse me, I'm scared to death because about 6 people came running and said, "Preacher wants you." My daughter was about 15 years old and in high school, and she had been having some kidney infections. 2 or 3 weeks had passed, and we thought she was well. She went back for her final visit with the doctor, and it happened that the main doctor was away, and an intern was filling in, and I was at the switchboard here, and he called me, and he said, Miss O'Brien, we've made a terrible mistake. A week ago, we told you that Kay's kidneys were all right, but now I find that she has a blocked kidney, and it'll have to be removed immediately. Well, my world fell out from under me, and having been taught that doctors are gods, I said, well, do what you must. This is a Thursday, and he wanted to put her in the hospital Friday and remove the kidney right away. I said, go ahead. But all of a sudden, something pierced my heart. Brother Hyles was in his office, and I called him, and I said, Preacher, I need to talk to you. Something terrible has happened. He said, all right, put someone on the board and come meet me in the waiting room. So I did. And I told him what happened, and he said, take her to Mayo. I said, Preacher, I can't take her to Mayo. My husband is out of work. We have no insurance, have no money to go on. He said, I didn't ask you any questions. I said, take her to Mayo. I said, well, I have to ask Paul. He said, well, get his permission. So I did. Paul consented. That's my husband. And he arranged for my ride up there, gave us money to eat on, money for a place to stay, and he said, I want to report day by day. Well, we went up there thinking that she was going to lose a kidney. Now, the girl had had a lot of other problems, female concern, throughout her life, and they found at the end of a long, exhausting week that all she had was a tilted kidney that was functioning perfectly normal. But these doctors here would have removed that kidney. She would not have had that kidney any longer. Mayo said what she does have is a little female problem that we can correct, which wasn't even indicated out here at this doctor. But because of Brother Hyles and his wisdom, her kidney was saved. So we tell her that she has 3 kidneys, 2 that the Lord gave her and 1 that the preacher gave her.
What I'm trying to tell you fellas is that I want to convince you that if God's called you, you're God's man. And your folks not going to feel it until you feel it. I do not claim to be perfect. I do not claim to be more spiritual than many of my people. But there's one thing I'm as sure of as I am that I'm saved, and that is I'm a man of God. I know that. That's not my merit. It's because it's His choice. And I want you guys to go home as God's men. And I want you people to feel like that they're walking with God's man. We're going to have a break. We'll come back here. Let's see. We'll come back here at 3:35. That's 33 minutes from now. Thank you.